They said it would never happen. They laughed at us. They called us delusional for even thinking about it. And yet, on Monday Night Raw, the impossible became reality when Chris Jericho, yes, Chris Jericho, stepped foot in a WWE ring for the first time in years to save CM Punk from a brutal assault. But here's what's really got me fired up, and what nobody is talking about. Was this actually about saving Punk? Or is Jericho playing a game so calculated, so manipulative, that we're all falling for it? Because if you think Y2J came back out of the goodness of his heart, you haven't been paying attention to anything he's done in the last decade. Let me paint you the picture of what went down on Raw, and then we're going to dissect exactly why this changes everything, and I mean everything, about the landscape of professional wrestling right now. The setup nobody saw coming. CM Punk has been feuding with the Vision, this new faction that's been absolutely decimating everyone in their path. For weeks, Punk has been fighting this war alone. His allies? Nowhere to be found. Seth Rollins won't help him because of their history. Drew McIntyre certainly isn't coming to his rescue. And let's be honest, Punk has burned so many bridges in WWE that finding someone willing to stand beside him is like finding a needle in a haystack. Monday night, the Vision set a trap. They lured Punk into what seemed like a one-on-one confrontation with their leader, but it was all a setup. The numbers game caught up with him. 4-on-1. They beat him down in the center of that ring, and the crowd was screaming for someone, anyone, to make the save. Here's a question for you. Before Jericho's music hit, who did you think was coming out to save Punk? Drop your answer in the comments because I guarantee most of you got it wrong. The lights went out, and when they came back on, there he was. The jacket, the lights, that unmistakable presence. Chris Jericho was standing at the top of the ramp in a WWE arena for the first time since 2022, and the place absolutely erupted. The moment that broke the internet, Jericho stormed that ring like a man possessed. Clotheslines, drop kicks, the walls of Jericho locked in on one of the Vision's members while the others scattered like cockroaches when you turn on the kitchen light. The save was made. Punk was helped to his feet. The two men stood face to face in the center of the ring, and for a moment, just a brief, fleeting moment, they nodded at each other in mutual respect before Jericho's music hit again and he left through the crowd. Social media exploded. Jericho in WWE. The forbidden door just got kicked off its hinges. AEW is finished. The hot takes were flying faster than Jericho's springboard dropkick. But here's where I'm going to pump the brakes and ask you to think critically about what we just witnessed. The history we can't ignore. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Chris Jericho and CM Punk have history. Not the good kind. Not the we're best friends behind the scenes kind. These two have legitimate, documented tension dating back years. There have been reports, shoot interviews, and subtle jabs thrown back and forth between them for the better part of a decade. Remember when Punk left WWE in 2014 and Jericho was one of the few people who publicly criticized his decision? Remember the stories about backstage arguments during their 2012 feud? And let's not forget that both men have egos the size of the Madison Square Garden marquee. They are both main eventers. They are both legends. They are both guys who believe they should be the center of attention. Quick trivia for the comments: what year did CM Punk and Chris Jericho have their famous feud over the WWE Championship? Let's see who the real Wrestling Zone fans are. So when Jericho makes this grand return to save Punk of all people, my first instinct isn't wow, what a heroic moment. My first instinct is, what is Jericho really up to? The contractual nightmare. Now let's address the massive elephant in the room that has all the dirt sheet writers and wrestling journalists scrambling: Jericho's contract situation. As far as anyone publicly knows, Jericho is still contracted to AEW. Tony Khan hasn't released any statement. AEW hasn't acknowledged this on their programming. And WWE certainly hasn't held a press conference explaining how they pulled this off. Which brings me to 3 possible scenarios, and I want you to tell me in the comments which one you think is most likely. Option 1, this was a one-night-only appearance, a special deal worked out between all parties where Jericho appears, makes his impact, and returns to AEW. It's been done before with other companies. The wrestling business is more collaborative than the tribalistic fans want to admit. Option 2, Jericho's AEW contract had a specific clause that allowed him to make WWE appearances under certain conditions, and this was the perfect storm of circumstances that triggered it. Maybe Jericho still works AEW dates but can pop up in WWE when storylines demand it. Option 3, and this is the one that has me most intrigued, Jericho negotiated his exit from AEW weeks ago. WWE kept it completely under wraps, and this return is the beginning of a full-time run. The shock factor was intentional. The secret was kept tighter than Fort Knox because they knew the impact would be massive. Why this matters more than you think. But here's why I'm not just excited, I'm actually concerned. And you should be too. Because if Jericho is back in WWE full-time, it raises some serious questions about the state of AEW. Jericho has been one of their top stars since day one. He was their first world champion. He's been in some of their biggest storylines. If he's jumping ship now, what does that say about AEW's future? And before the AEW defenders come at me in the comments, I'm not saying AEW is dying. I'm saying that losing Jericho would be a significant blow to their credibility and their ability to position themselves as a legitimate alternative to WWE. On the flip side, if this is just a short-term thing, then WWE is playing with fire. You don't bring Chris Jericho back for a one-off save and expect fans to just move on. The anticipation is now through the roof. The questions are piling up. And if next week on Raw there's no follow-up, no explanation, no continuation of this story, then WWE will have fumbled one of the biggest moments in recent memory. The Vision's reaction. Let's also talk about the Vision for a second, because they are the ones who got absolutely humiliated in this whole situation. They've spent months building themselves as this unstoppable force, this new generation of dominance that answers to nobody. And in one night, a 54-year-old Chris Jericho rolled back the years and made them look like chumps. How do they respond to this? Do they go after Jericho now? Do they intensify their assault on Punk? Does this create a situation where Punk and Jericho are forced to team up despite their personal issues because they have a common enemy? Here's another question for the comments section. Do you want to see Punk and Jericho as reluctant partners, or would you rather see them eventually turn on each other? Let me know your fantasy booking. The bigger picture. This return is bigger than just one segment on Raw. This is potentially the beginning of a new chapter in professional wrestling where the lines between promotions become more blurred, where talent movement becomes more fluid, and where the old territorial mindset finally dies completely. Or, and this is equally possible, this is just a brilliant one-time shock moment that will be forgotten in 2 months when the next big thing happens. That's the wrestling business, baby. We're either witnessing history or we're getting worked harder than we've ever been worked before. The unanswered questions. As we move forward from this moment, there are so many questions that need answers. Is this the start of Jericho's revenge tour? Is he here to cement his legacy one final time in the company that made him a star? Or is there something more sinister at play? Because if wrestling has taught us anything, it's that when things seem too good to be true, there's usually a swerve coming. And Centimeter Punk, does he even want Jericho's help? We saw the nod of respect, but we didn't see them shake hands. We didn't see them cut a promo together. We got the save, the moment, and then Jericho disappeared into the crowd like some wrestling Batman. Final question for you amazing Wrestling Zone fans, on a scale of 1 to 10, how shocked were you by Jericho's return? And do you think this helps or hurts Centimeter Punk's storyline going forward? This story is far from over. In fact, it feels like we're just getting started. Whatever happens next, whether Jericho stays or goes, whether this leads to a dream team or an inevitable betrayal, one thing is certain, professional wrestling in 2026 just got a whole lot more interesting. Make sure you're subscribed and have that notification bell turned on, because we're going to be covering every single development as this story unfolds. Drop your thoughts in the comments, share this video with your wrestling friends, and let's keep this conversation going. This is Wrestling Zone, and we'll see you in the next one.